My fiancée started sleeping with her phone under her pillow, so I synced it to mine. The next morning, a message came in. Morning, beautiful. I replied, morning. Should I wake her up so she can say it back? The contact vanished in seconds. I never imagined I'd be sharing something so personal here, but I feel like I need to get this off my chest. Maybe writing it down will help me process everything. My name's Jake. I'm 32, and I've been living in Chicago for most of my life. I work as a software developer for a mid-sized tech company downtown. About 5 years ago, I met my fiancée, Sarah, at a friend's birthday party in Wicker Park. Sarah's 30 now, a talented graphic designer working for a well-known agency in the city. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love for art, music, and the vibrant culture of Chicago. After 4 years of dating, I proposed to her during a weekend getaway in Galena, a charming town we both love. She said yes, and we started planning our wedding for the following summer. We moved in together into a cozy apartment in Logan Square, a neighborhood we both adored for its eclectic vibe and proximity to our favorite spots. Our life together seemed perfect, filled with weekend brunches at local cafes, evening walks along the 606 trail, and countless nights binge-watching our favorite shows. But a few months ago, I started noticing subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. She became more protective of her phone, always keeping it within arm's reach. She'd take it with her to the bathroom, and at night, she'd place it under her pillow. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just more attached to her device. But then, she started being more distant, often lost in thought, and our conversations became more surface level. One evening, we were at Daisy's, our favorite restaurant in Logan Square. Sarah seemed unusually distracted, constantly glancing at her phone. When I asked her if everything was okay, she forced a smile and said she was just stressed about an upcoming project at work. I wanted to believe her, but something felt off. A week later, while she was in the shower, curiosity got the better of me. I picked up her phone, but it was locked with a new passcode. That was odd since we always shared our passwords. Feeling uneasy, I decided to sync her phone to mine using our shared iCloud account. I know it wasn't the right thing to do, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. The next morning, as I was making coffee in our kitchen, a message popped up on my phone. Morning, beautiful. My heart sank. The message was from a contact named M. I replied, morning. Should I wake her up so she can say it back? Within seconds, the contact vanished, and the message was deleted. But it was too late. The damage was done. I confronted Sarah immediately. At first, she denied everything, but when I showed her the synced messages, she broke down. She admitted to having an emotional affair with a colleague named Mark. They had been texting for months, sharing personal thoughts and feelings. She insisted that it hadn't turned physical, but the betrayal cut deep nonetheless. We decided to go to couples therapy to address the issues in our relationship. Through therapy, we uncovered underlying problems we hadn't addressed, like communication gaps and unmet emotional needs. It was a painful process, but it also brought us closer in some ways. However, trust is a fragile thing. Despite her assurances and the therapy sessions, I found it hard to move past the betrayal. I became more paranoid, often checking her phone and questioning her whereabouts. It wasn't healthy for either of us. One evening, after a particularly intense argument, we decided to take a break. Sarah moved in with her sister in Andersonville for a while, and I stayed in our apartment. During this time apart, I did a lot of soul-searching and realized that I couldn't continue the relationship without trust. We met up after a month to discuss our future. With heavy hearts, we decided to call off the engagement and go our separate ways. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but it felt necessary for both of our well-being. Now, months later, I'm focusing on healing and rediscovering myself. I've started new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and even adopted a dog named Max. It's a journey, but I'm hopeful for the future. A week after Sarah and I officially called off the engagement, I was still living in our apartment alone. The place felt haunted. Her scent was still on the pillow. Her favorite mug still in the dish rack. I didn't have the energy to clean, not even to put away the dried-out bouquet of roses I had bought her a few days before the breakup. Everything just sat there like a museum of a life that didn't happen. I was doing everything I could to distract myself. I went on long walks with Max, joined a local boxing gym, and even picked up late-night shifts at work. Anything to avoid being in that apartment too long. But no matter what I did, I couldn't shake this feeling, like something didn't add up. Mark. That name kept circling in my mind like a fly I couldn't swat. Sarah had told me they were just texting, that it wasn't physical, that they never met outside of work. But that didn't make sense. Why hide his number? Why delete the message instantly? And how could someone say morning, beautiful, to a woman every day for months and not take it further? I started asking around. Quietly. Discreetly. I had never met Mark in person, but I knew he worked at the same agency as Sarah. I reached out to someone I vaguely knew, Lisa, a friend of a friend, who used to intern at the agency. When I brought up Mark, her reaction wasn't what I expected. She paused, then lowered her voice. Are you talking about Mark Tellinga? The creative director? Yeah, I said. Lisa bit her lip. I'd stay far away from that guy. Everybody knows he's married with kids. Has a reputation for hitting on younger women in the office. HR has had complaints. But he's tight with the CEO. Nothing ever sticks. I felt like I'd been punched. He's married. Lisa nodded. 2 kids. I think his wife's name is Rachel or something. They live out in Evanston. I thought everyone at the agency knew. I couldn't breathe. My fiancée wasn't just cheating, she was part of someone else's affair too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, phone in hand, debating what to do. Sarah and I weren't together anymore. I had no claim on her. But I couldn't just let this sit. I needed answers. So I made a burner Gmail. I used a fake name and emailed Rachel telling her. Subject, something you might not know body. Hi Rachel, I don't know you, and you don't know me, but I think we're both being lied to. Your husband Mark and my ex-fiancée Sarah have been in contact for a while now. I can show you the messages. I have no intention of starting drama, I just thought you should know. I didn't expect a reply. But she did. Less than 24 hours later. Her response was short. Meet me. She sent an address to a coffee shop in Evanston. I went. Rachel was in her late 30s, dressed like she just came from work, blazer and slacks. Her face looked calm but cold. When I introduced myself, she didn't waste time. I've had suspicions for a while, she said. He's been working late. Always texting. Phone flipped down when I walk into the room. I even found an Uber receipt last month, downtown pickup, Logan Square drop-off. Now that makes sense. I didn't know what to say. I handed her my phone and showed her the screenshots. The morning, beautiful. The late-night messages. One even said, last night was everything. That one hurt the most. She stared at the screen, her eyes narrowing. Do you have Sarah's number? She asked. I nodded slowly. She pulled out her phone, dialed, and put it on speaker. Sarah picked up after 2 rings. Hey, Mark. Rachel cut her off. Not Mark. There was silence on the line. Then Sarah said quietly, who is this? Rachel. Mark's wife. I thought Sarah would hang up, but she didn't. Instead, she whispered, I'm sorry. Rachel didn't blink. You will be. She ended the call. We sat there in silence. She thanked me for the information and left. I never saw her again. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. 2 days later, I got a knock on my door. It was Mark. Mark was taller than I expected. Sharp suit, but his eyes were tired. His jaw clenched like he was holding back a scream. I stood there frozen, Max barking like crazy behind me. Can we talk? Mark asked, his voice low, almost like a warning. I didn't move. What do you want? He took a breath. Just 5 minutes. Please. I hesitated. Then I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Max kept barking, scratching at the door like he sensed something was off. We stood on the front step, mid-October wind cutting through the air. Mark looked me dead in the eyes. Why'd you go to my wife? He asked. I crossed my arms. Because your wife deserved to know. His jaw tightened. You don't know what you've done. That's when I realized this wasn't a casual guy who made a mistake. This was a man used to control, used to getting away with things. He stepped closer. You think you're the hero in this story? You ruined 2 families. I almost laughed. You did that all on your own. Mark's face shifted. Sarah didn't tell you everything. Something in his voice stopped me. What? He looked around, like he was deciding how much to say. Then he leaned in slightly. She wasn't just texting me. She came to my house. More than once. When Rachel was out, she knew exactly what this was. I stared at him. She told me you were boring. Safe. That she wanted passion. I didn't want to hear anymore. I shoved him back, not hard, but enough. Get off my porch. Mark adjusted his jacket, like this whole visit was just another meeting. Before walking away, he turned back. If I were you, I'd stay quiet. You stirred up something you're not ready for. That night, I couldn't sleep again. My mind ran wild. Sarah had lied. Not just once. Over and over. It wasn't just texts. It wasn't just a mistake. She had gone to his house. She had told him I was safe. I didn't know what to do. My stomach felt like it was folding in on itself. I thought that was it. That the drama was done. But then, 3 days later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Meet me, please. I'll explain everything. It was Sarah. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. We chose a park by the lakefront, near Montrose Beach. It was cold, but the air helped keep my head from spinning. She looked like she hadn't slept. No makeup, hoodie pulled tight over her head. Nothing like the confident woman I used to know. I didn't know who else to talk to, she said, voice cracking. I'm scared. I frowned. Of what? She sat down on the bench. Of Mark. Of everything. I made a huge mistake. I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. She told me everything. How the emotional affair had quickly turned physical. How Mark had been love-bombing her, sending her expensive gifts, telling her he'd leave his wife. How she felt trapped between 2 lives. How she started to suspect he was tracking her phone, showing up places unexpectedly, even following her once after work. I tried to end it, she said. A few weeks before everything blew up. He didn't take it well. He threatened to ruin me at work. Said he'd tell my boss I was unstable. That he'd make sure I never worked in design again. My stomach dropped. And you stayed with him? I didn't know what else to do. And I didn't want to drag you into it. I shook my head slowly. You already did. She looked up at me, eyes glossy. He's dangerous, Jake. He's not just some cheating husband. He's manipulative. And he's powerful. I stood there silent. 1,000 questions in my head. But only one came out. Why now? She looked at the water, wind whipping her hair around. Because you were the only one who ever made me feel safe. And I ruined that. Before I could answer, her phone buzzed. It was him. Mark, nice spot. Cold for a walk though. We both froze. She turned pale. He's here. Sarah's face turned white as she read the message. She glanced around, shoulders trembling. I stood up immediately, scanning the edge of the park. There was a black BMW parked across the street. A man in a dark coat leaned against it, arms crossed. It's him, she whispered. I stepped in front of her instinctively. She clutched her phone tight, knuckles pale. My heart was pounding, not out of fear, but fury. I had swallowed too much of this. Now, I wanted the truth, all of it. Right here. Out in the open. Let's end this, I said. She nodded slowly. We walked across the street. Mark didn't move until we were nearly on him. When he saw me, his jaw twitched, but he didn't look surprised. Didn't I tell you to stay out of it? He said to me. Sarah spoke first. No more threats, Mark. It's over. Mark laughed, cold, sharp. Over? You think you just walk away? I could feel my hands curling into fists. You're a married man harassing your ex-mistress after blowing up her engagement. Don't test me. Mark turned to me with a smirk. You think you know her? Ask her about the hotel in Milwaukee. Ask her about the pictures she sent me a week before your proposal. I looked at Sarah. She broke. Tears welled in her eyes instantly. She looked away. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't think it would come out. I felt like someone pulled the floor from under me. You cheated before I even proposed? She was crying now. He made me feel important. Like I mattered. And I was scared of how safe you were. You were too good to me. I didn't feel like I deserved you. Mark stepped forward. And now she's crawling back to you, hoping you'll forget she spent half your relationship lying to your face. That was it. I snapped. You know what, Mark? You can keep playing the predator, but this ends now. You can't ruin her anymore. You already did. And me? I'm done. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Say hi to HR. Mark's face changed. He reached out, tried to grab the phone. But I stepped back, held it up. Say something threatening. Please. He didn't. Instead, he got in his car and peeled off into traffic. Sarah collapsed onto the curb, crying. I sat beside her, numb. You didn't deserve this, she said through sobs. None of it. No, I said quietly. But I still let it happen. People walked by. A couple older folks glanced over. One woman slowed down, asked if we needed help. I shook my head. Sarah wiped her face, pulling herself together. Are you going to be okay? I asked. She nodded, barely. Eventually, we sat there in silence. The days that followed were heavy. Sarah turned in her resignation at the agency. She moved in with her sister again, said she was going to start therapy. Rachel, the wife, filed for divorce, according to Lisa, who still had contacts at the company. HR launched a quiet investigation into Mark, and though I never heard the result, he disappeared from the company's website a few weeks later. As for me, I took some time off work. Got a few days away in Michigan, just me and Max. I sat by the lake, thinking about how everything crumbled. The engagement, the future I had pictured, all of it gone. And yet, I wasn't angry anymore. Not like before. I realized I had ignored signs. I didn't ask questions when I should have. I let fear of rocking the boat blind me. I wasn't to blame for what Sarah did, but I had given too much of myself without ever checking if she truly wanted the same life. One afternoon, I got a letter from Sarah. It wasn't a plea to come back, just a long apology. She said she would carry the guilt forever, that I had every right to hate her, that she hoped, one day, I'd find someone who actually saw me, not just needed me for stability. I didn't write back, but I didn't rip it up either. I kept it, tucked in a drawer with old movie stubs, photos from better days, reminders of who I was, and who I was becoming. Sometimes healing isn't about moving on fast. Sometimes it's about sitting with the hurt long enough to learn something real. I'm not whole yet, but I'm not broken anymore either. Jake stays single, focused on rebuilding his life, scarred but wiser. He no longer clings to a fantasy of what love should be, but he's open to what it could be, someday.